Okay. Our third speaker this evening is Jim Sims. Jim is delivering a Pathways project in Persuasive Influence, and the project itself is Connect with Storytelling. How timely. Jim has been a lifelong baseball fan and remembers trying out for his high school team, the City Champs, before being cut because he couldn't hit the curveball. Jim was asked to be a baseball umpire in 1992 by his college roommate and friend, the late J. Cincotta. I didn't pronounce that correctly. Tonight, Jim shares some of life's lessons he learned on the baseball diamond. His speech is from the Pathways Persuasive Influence Storytelling. The title of his speech is Field of Dreams. Help me to welcome Jim Sims.
By a show of hands, how many of you remember going to your very first major league game? John did, or maybe it was a high minor league game. Sometimes some people grow up in cities or towns where a major league is far away. You could go to the Lansing Lugnuts, and I believe they've drawn over 1 million people in a particular year. So sometimes minor league baseball can be pretty successful too. I have a vague recollection of going to Ebbets Field with my dad. That's where the Brooklyn Dodgers played. Charles Ebbets started out as a ticket taker and then eventually became the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers. I don't have a great memory of it. I just remember that we went there. And what's interesting is Doris Kearns Goodwin, the biographer, Pulitzer Prize winner, and former sports commentator. She was a diehard Dodger fan. She's 80 years old now. She turned 80 in January. And I remember her talking about the first time her father took her to a Dodger game. She was about 7 years old. The Brooklyn Dodgers left New York forever in 1958. And Doris Kearns Goodwin stopped being a baseball fan until 1975 when she was at Harvard University and she became a Boston Red Sox fan. We won't hold that against her. But what I really recollect is going to Yankee Stadium. Jimmy McGinn, my neighbor, his father would take a group of us kids, 4 or 5 kids every year to Yankee Stadium. And in 1960, we were at Yankee Stadium on Old Timers Day. And I remember sitting there and all of a sudden they said, and now number 5, Joe DiMaggio. And everybody cheered. And I said, wow, this guy must have been somebody pretty special. I was a Dodger fan. I didn't know who Joe DiMaggio was, but it was so great to be at the baseball game. Matter of fact, at the end of that game, we waited outside and Roger Maris got in a taxi cab. You know, back then they got in taxi cabs. They didn't drive Jaguars or in Maseratis. And he went home in a taxi. So I reached my hand in. I shook hands with Roger Maris the year before he hit the 61 home runs. I didn't wash my hand for a week. I'm not even a Yankee fan. It wasn't back then.
Yeah.
So it's one of those experiences that a lot of people hold near and dear to their hearts, whether they're young boys or even young girls in this day and age. You also remember how many people play Little League baseball or Little League softball? John, you played, no?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go. I know you played football, but I played CYO as a preteen Catholic youth organization, my parish, Incarnation Parish. And I had the opportunity to be coached by a group of different coaches, some more skillful than others. And one of our coaches was a Jewish man by the name of Jack. We're the Catholic youth organization. And I remember at the end of a game, I said, Jack, why would you, a Jew, be coaching a bunch of Catholic kids? And he taught me a life lesson. He said, 1, I love baseball and I like kids. So I think that's pretty interesting, and it helps me to recollect that Jackie Robinson said, a life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. And on April 15, 1947, Jackie Robinson played his first game for the Brooklyn Dodgers. What an impact he had. It's no doubt he was the most consequential player in the history of baseball. We're still learning lessons from Jackie, and we're also learning lessons from baseball. It was Billy Graham himself who said, a coach will impact more young people in a year than the average person does in a lifetime. So I have a great respect for the coaches that I had, the coaches I connect with as an umpire. When I worked for the United Way of Long Island, I had an experience. My manager, Teresa, she said to a group of us, you got to work together better. You have to have more teamwork. And I remember my late friend and neighbor, Marsha Markscheid, said, I don't really comprehend that. I really don't understand that well, because I never played ball. I was never on a team. So I thought that was really interesting. And it was 1970 that the House Subcommittee on Education looked into sex bias in education and in sports and came up with Title IX. And if I look back on it now, I'm sure that if I were the father of a daughter or the grandfather of a daughter, I would be pretty proud that they can play on an equal field and that they can also have their part in Fields of Dreams. I'd like to see maybe someday a major league player who might be a woman, bless you. And we have Jen Powell, who's an umpire in the minor leagues, and hopefully she'll be an umpire shortly because baseball has to catch up with some of the other sports. We have some senior executives in baseball that are fairly successful. Kim Eng is the general manager of the Miami Marlins, and Rachel Balkovich is managing the Toppin Yankees, the Tampa Toppins. Field of Dreams, story of Shoeless Joe Jackson, it's hard to believe was 30 years ago in 1989. James Earl Jones, who played Terrence Mann, said, it'll be just like when we were kids. People will come, Helen, the character that people will come and all of a sudden the cars come up. And, you know, we have Disneyland. Now, it's not necessarily a story of Shoeless Joe Jackson, but instead of Shoeless Joe Jackson, we have Mickey Mouse and Luke Skywalker. Fields of Dreams and places like Disneyland, they offer us optimism and joy. It's a chance for people to look back on their dreams without having any regret. Now, not everyone's dreams can come true, but it's a chance of having realism and to enjoy the joys of life. And I'll just end with the very knowledgeable and quotable Yogi Berra. He said, love is the most important thing in the world, but baseball is pretty good too. The game has evolved.
Yes, it has. Very good. Here's your notes. The green. I got that award being around for a long time. I have to tell you that the first